Now, welcome to this annual conference on the NMBU Sustainability Arenas. My name is Finn-Arne Weltzien, ProRector of Research Innovation, and I'm acting as the chair today, stepping in for Astrid Sinnes that unfortunately could not attend. Now, the work on the UN Sustainable Development Goals must not be reduced to only colorful posters we adorn ourselves with. They form a direction that involves a change in the way we live our lives, how we use nature, what we eat, how we live and move. The SDGs are ambitious, but it's also necessary that they are ambitious. In some contexts, they can also be complex and perhaps contradictory, as we all know. Knowledge is therefore the key to creating change. And NMBU is known as the Sustainability University, not for it to be a timely, effective PR measure, but because it says something about us being a university with a mission. Now, one SDG stands out from the others because it forms the very prerequisite for the success of the others. This is, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals on collaboration. It says something about the necessity of global cooperation, and the knowledge is spread and put to use. But it's also about local collaboration at the university, about interdisciplinarity to solve problems from different angles. And NMBU sustainability arenas reflect NMBU's unique prerequisites for working with sustainability issues. So it's therefore a pleasure to welcome you all to an exciting morning about sustainability here at NMBU. Once a year, NMBU sustainability arenas invite to an open conference instead of producing an annual written report, providing transdisciplinary insights on the sustainability issues. This conference is about innovation, research, and how universities can contribute to sustainable development. Later on, Christine Spiten from Fernley Securities will, in conversation with NMBU's award-winning professor Elin Kubberud, shed light on some of the scope for sustainable development. We also give you a taste of exciting research from NMBU sustainability arenas through presentations and demonstrations, and an opportunity to visit unique laboratories where you can experience a bit of what we work on in the field of sustainability. Now, I'd like to inform you that the conference will be recorded, and the link to the event will be published at NMBU's webpage. But before we dive into the scientific presentations, we welcome our dear Rector Curt Rice, who will give a talk about research, education, and innovation for sustainability. Please, Curt.
Thanks, Finn, and thanks to all of you for being here today. It's really exciting to have the opportunity to reflect a bit on what transdisciplinarity means and what kinds of consequences that has for the work that we're trying to do here at NMBU. But before I jump into that, I would like to just take a minute on the topic of the sustainability arenas, bærekraftsarena, which is really a prestige project here at NMBU, where we have funded a number of groups internally to be able to pursue not only research but also education and not least of all popularization of the work that we're doing. And when I say it's a prestige project, that has a very simple definition, and that is in a time of extremely difficult budgets and prioritization, our board of directors manages to find money to put into this particular project. That in and of itself is unusual, and it's a very good move because it allows us to focus, to clearly identify hubs of activity, and it allows us also to highlight the connection between education and research. We're about to mark the halfway point on the Sustainable Development Goals, and those will be discussed in September in New York. Work to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals has been made even more difficult of course, by the pandemic, by the rapid properties of climate change, by the loss of biodiversity. And it's in that setting where not only do we need to address specific challenges, but we need to look at challenges together. So to take one example, when demands for food and timber from one place are combined with the effects of pollution and climate change, then we get into a very complicated dynamic that not only potentially degrades food-related ecosystems, but also leads to a loss of the kinds of resources that actually represent nature's contributions to what people can do. We see this in the global food system. When food is produced in an unsustainable way, that leads, for example, to water overconsumption, and it leads to other kinds of challenges to the environment that can lead to extinction, loss of diversity, and reduce the contribution that's made to humans by a well-sustained nature. These are situations in which policies can have a tendency to work in isolation and to address these challenges individually in ways that unfortunately can make the situation even worse. For this reason, 140 governments have requested the production of something called the Nexus Assessment. And the Nexus Assessment is a particular work and project that our own Professor Siri Eriksson is involved in, where they are looking exactly at issues of overlap at places where different challenges bump into each other, to try to understand the importance of taking interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches to issues related to biodiversity, water, food, and health. Now think about NMBU when I say those things: biodiversity, water, food, and health. That's us, my friends, that's us. And we are doing work here, and we are offering educational programs here and doing research production here that is at the very heart of the biggest, most difficult societal challenges that we face internationally today. The goal of the Nexus Assessment is to try to imagine concrete options that can be made available to policymakers to try to address the interactions of risk and damage jointly and equitably. And this includes nature-based solutions. This includes, for example, work on coastal wetlands, which are a classic example of something that's threatened by climate change, where if we can maintain or restore wetlands, then we create not only habitat, we create the possibility of improving fish stocks, we also create plant-based, nature-based solutions to carbon capture. These are incredibly complex, but incredibly important projects. They're at work on this assessment right now. The expectation is to complete this report in 2024, and I hope that NMBU will be a place where that report can receive significant attention and perhaps even be the home of the Norwegian launch of that report. One of the most important things in the work being done in the Nexus Assessment is that they are taking an innovative approach to including expertise that's represented by indigenous peoples and local communities. That's a topic of extreme relevance in Norway today. Over the last few weeks, we've seen a severe clash between two legitimate and important issues in the discussion of sustainability. We've seen a clash in the Fosen case, is what I'm of course referring to, between the work that's being done in Norway to create green energies. Wind energy is in principle a very good idea. It's sustainable, it's innovative, and it creates the possibility of helping us move away from fossil fuels. Social sustainability, among other things, means that we can live as we have lived, and the conflict in this particular case highlights a particular threat to that. When I was trying to understand some of the issues in that particular conflict, I was reminded of a case in northern Norway from the time that I lived there, where some people had noticed in the United States when they were putting up very big power lines, that it affected the migration patterns of caribou. Caribou are a close cousin to reindeer. And the caribou didn't like to go under the power lines. And that turned out to have a scientific explanation, which I can't reconstruct for you. But the point is that this is not just mythology, that there's actual physiological nature-based explanations for the interaction of electricity-related infrastructures and animals. That reindeer perhaps don't like to graze in a place where there are windmills probably has a good scientific explanation. It's not just a case where we should say, yeah, sorry, you used to have your reindeer graze where there were no windmills and now there are windmills here, but they can graze here nonetheless. It's not that simple. It's a genuine conflict where there are genuine sustainability issues on both sides of the table. And those have been addressed in the courts, and they've been addressed by the government to a certain extent. And yesterday we heard our oil and energy minister attempt to talk about transdisciplinarity, although he didn't realize that was what he was talking about. But he should. And we have a responsibility to try to get to him, to help him understand that he's talking not so much about land rights, but he's talking about a sustainability conflict that needs to be addressed with the help of science along with a set of political measures. These are the kinds of reasons that lie behind the decision of this university last year in the formulation of a new strategy to emphasize two things that I'd like to remind you of. One is that NMBU has committed itself to offering educational programs which equip students who graduate from here with qualifications regarding sustainability and how to pursue solutions across different fields as part of that work. And in our commitment to research and research-based education, we explicitly note that we're going to be a leading institution when it comes to interdisciplinary cooperation, both in research and research-based education in the areas in which we work. We are right at the heart of what is happening in the world, and we have wonderful sustainability arenas that are going into specific projects and coming together maybe once a year in this seminar, I hope once a week at our new Sustainability Hub, to realize and understand and help us to understand the inherently interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary nature of these problems. So it's a pleasure for me to be able to be part of this event today and to welcome all of you here once again, and I hope that you get ideas today. I hope you get some new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Curt, for a thought-provoking introduction to today's conference. Okay, so now we move forward to the presentations from our sustainability arenas. And first out is Morten Lillemo, who will present a spin-off research project called ProteinBar. This project contributes to increased value creation and sustainability in Norwegian agriculture. And more specifically, it highlights increased production and utilization of Norwegian food and feed resources, breeding of new plant varieties, as well as development of production methods tailored to regional conditions, improving soil health and agronomy, automation, and use of new sensor technologies. So Morten, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will present this project called ProteinBar, and that is about increasing the sustainability of the agriculture in Norway, focusing on how we feed our animals. As maybe not all of you are aware of, is that animal production in Norway has become more specialized. If you look into the milking cows, for example, many farmers, they have, you can see, yes, good. They have invested in big equipment, milking robots and so forth, and that requires much higher milk production per cow. The same with the pig production and chicken and all the other animals, the production is more and more specialized, meaning that we rely more and more on very high quality feed concentrates to feed these animals. So the consumption of feed concentrates is increasing. And because we have a limited production potential in Norway, it means that we import more and more grains to feed our animals. And much of that import has come as soybean and rapeseed. And that has come at the expense of Norwegian production. So if you look at what is the share of the feed, Norwegian produced feed that we feed to the animals, it used to be around 3/4 about 20 years ago. Now it's less than 58%. And the Norwegian agriculture, you probably heard the slogan in Norwegian, norsk mat på norske ressurser, or in English, Norwegian food based on Norwegian resources. And we can then ask a question, is this Norwegian food based on Norwegian resources? At least the share of Norwegian resources here is going down. So this is something we have to do something with. So how can we increase the protein production in Norway? You probably heard about protein crops, like faba beans, rapeseed, field peas, and so forth. And there is a trend now that we should produce more of these, and I totally agree, we should. And there is actually a potential to increase that production 7 times from what we have today. But and that's the maximum, and that's still a very small share of the cereal acreage in Norway. And the reason for that is that we need crop rotation. And when we grow more faba bean, for example, it means that we will grow less wheat or barley and oats because we have limited land. I think we should do as much as possible with this strategy, but the potential is not that big. Where the potential lies is actually in increasing the protein content of the grains that we already produce. And the farmers in Norway, they have the technology. There are more and more farmers now using precision agriculture tools. For example, the Yara N sensor. So it's possible actually to increase, to have a more specialized fertilization strategies to increase the protein content of the grains. At the same time, we know that there is a great genetic potential in increasing also the genetic parts of the protein content, so we can actually produce barley varieties with higher protein content potential. And that's where plant breeding comes in. Just take a quick example here. What is the potential? In Norway, we produce around 500,000 tons of barley. The protein content of that barley is around 10.5%. Let's say now that yields about 55,000 tons of protein. Let's say now that we implement optimal fertilization of the barley that we produce. We know from wheat, the wheat that is being produced for bread making in Norway has very high protein content, and that is because farmers get paid for fertilizing the wheat fields so that they can get the optimal protein content. We know that it's also possible to do the same in barley. So let's say all the barley that is produced in Norway has 12.5% protein instead of 10. That's possible. We increase the protein content by 2%. That yields about 10,000 tons extra protein. Give us some years and we can produce new barley varieties that also on average has a 2% higher protein content. These two effects are additive to each other. So that also adds another 10,000 tons. And putting these things together, we can go from 55,000 tons of protein to 76,000 tons. And that is possible. Technology is there to do it. It's just a matter of find the best way how to do it and make it happen. And that's where this ProteinBar project comes in, because We work across the whole sector, from basic soil science through agronomy, plant breeding, and agricultural extension service, and looking at the whole value chain. We have all the actors in this project to make these things happen. And here you can see just a quick overview of the partners. This project is led here by NMBU, and we have all the key actors in the value chain included in the project. We start from the basic things, what happens in the soil. What happens to, the plants need nitrogen and other nutrients. A lot of that is actually released from debris in the soil, dead roots, dead plant material from the previous growing season, and it's being released throughout the season. We need to understand the dynamics between the soil and the nutrient uptake in the plants. We have sensor technologies today. Many farmers in Norway, as said, they are using satellite images, or they use the Yara N sensor on their tractor. They can actually sense differences in the vegetation status of the crop, the healthiness of the biomass. And if you assume that these differences in greenness of the plant canopy is due to differences in nitrogen, you can actually achieve the right thing and giving the right amount of nitrogen to the crop. But there could be other reasons why plants are not growing so well. So that's why we need to include the soil. And in this project, we collaborate with the quite new Norwegian company called Agdir, who are specialized in soil sensors. And in this project, we will actually put sensors, wireless sensors, in the field to monitor the nitrogen status of the soil. And in this way, we can better calibrate what's happening above ground. And this work package is led by Trine Sogn at Mina and Ingunn Burud at Realtek here at NMBU. Then we need to think about how do we utilize this data to target the fertilization strategies. And for that, we collaborate with the NMBU in Apelsvoll, who will be conducting fertilization trials in barley, in close collaboration with the Norsk Landbruksrådgivning. So we will have actually fertilization trials being conducted regionally here in Norway, different locations, both here in the southeastern part of the country, but also in the Trøndelag area. And then we need to look into the genetics, and for that we collaborate with Graminor, and we will use the latest in the marker technologies, and also to understand the genetics behind differences in protein content and nutrient uptake of different varieties. So here we will grow yield trials of 1,000 breeding lines and cultivars at 2 locations over 2 years with different nitrogen fertilization levels to understand and being able to map the genes behind increased protein content, and then develop tools that can be used for more effective breeding of new varieties. Of course, the whole goal is that we should produce barley with higher protein content that can also be utilized in the feed industry to produce feed for the animals. So for that, we collaborate with the animal nutrition group here at BioVit at NMBU, and also Felleskjøpet Fôrutvikling, who will be running feeding trials based on barley with high protein content. And this will then enable the feed industry in Norway to actually make new feed recipes where this high protein content barley can be used to replace soybean and rapeseed. And last but not least, the most important thing is actually interaction and collaboration. So we have a work package which is more than just a dissemination work package in this project. It's actually a work package for making all the actors in the whole value chain to work together to achieve the goal. And the main thing here is actually to be able also to look into the pricing policy. So Felleskjøpet Agri, who is the market regulator for the grain sector in Norway, they have actually agreed as part of this project to look into what we call differential pricing. That means that the farmers should get paid higher price if they produce barley with higher protein content. How it is today is that all barley that is being produced in Norway is being paid the same price regardless of quality. So this is something we need to change. It needs to be profitable for the farmers to produce barley with higher protein. And if that happens, then I think a lot of things will happen. So to sum this up, we will in this project provide the knowledge that is needed to increase the protein content of the barley. But we need to achieve a sustainable economy. So it needs to be profitable for the farmers. They need to get paid for taking this technology in use. And it must be profitable for the feed industry to use Norwegian barley with higher protein content. And also it must be profitable for the animal farmers to use this new feed that is produced based on Norwegian resources. So if we can make those three things happen, then this project will be a success. And I think we have, good opportunities to achieve this in this project because we have all these actors together in our project and they show a lot of commitment. So I hope that we will achieve our goal. But nevertheless, there's a lot of interesting research in this project. So for me as a scientist, it's already a success that we have put all these different partners together. And we have already a lot of activity going on. So I hope that in 2 or 3 years, I could come back here again and tell you about what we have achieved so far in this project. So with that, I thank you and open up for questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Morten. Very interesting. And this is, of course, extremely relevant today, not the least because the government has opened up for this mission on sustainable feed on land and in water. and the share of Norwegian-based protein that you showed here, that share is even lower, of course, for the aquaculture industry. So this is a big task. Now, I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Hi, Markus Epek, IHWA. I was just wondering, do you also think about, I don't have the background about that, but are you going to think also about the impact on the environment when you are increasing the protein in production? Can that fertilizing and so on, can this have a little bit more impact on environment and on fields as well?
Okay, yes, that's a very relevant question, of course. We need to supply the amount of nutrients that the plants need, but if we oversupply, if we over-fertilize, that nitrogen will leak into the environment, and that's not good. So that's something we really focus on when we talk about sustainable fertilization. Is actually providing the input that the plants need. We need to monitor during the field season how much do the plants need. So we should not apply all the nitrogen at planting in the spring because we don't know yet what will be the yield potential. And maybe some of this, if we get a lot of rain, some of this nitrogen will be leaking out, will be washed out from the soil before they are taken up by the plants. So that's the whole idea actually of splitting the nitrogen fertilizer so that you don't give everything in the spring, but you supply during the season as much as the plants need. That's the whole idea here. So we need to achieve both goals, maximize the protein content of the grains, but not overdoing it.
Okay, 1 more here.
I was wondering how you work politically with this project. So you have several partners. Do you discuss among yourselves how to communicate with the government regarding the work that you're doing and regarding the policy changes or measures that they need to take in order to make this successful?
Yes, we do have connections, definitely there, but we have, Norwegian agricultural sector is in many ways kind of self-regulated in a way that, a lot of this market regulation is actually outsourced to the market actors themselves. Like, for example, Felleskjøpet Agri, they are actually have a mandate from the government actually to oversee the grain sector in Norway, that we produce enough of the different grains that we need, and that there is a pricing that actually makes the market forces to act together in the most optimal way. Of course, some people might say, coming from the outside, say that this is a very communistic way of doing it, but we have a relatively small and protected agricultural sector in Norway, and I think that is kind of the best. The good things is that everybody knows about each other. It's a kind of small community, and I can sense now, especially during the last few years, 2-3 years, especially with this, is kind of a wake-up call that we have. We are importing more and more soybean and rapeseed to feed our animal. That's not sustainable, and if this reaches out to the consumers, the whole agriculture in Norway will be in big shit, to use very frank words for it. So the big actors in the agricultural sector in Norway, they are realizing this, and they need to do something with it. So we have a lot of incentives now actually to make things happen, and things that was completely impossible just a few years ago. I mean, to ask Felleskjøpet, for example, to do things in a different way than they have done for the last 20-30 years, because there's a lot of costs, of changing infrastructure in this sector, but now they also realize that we have to do something because we are all in the same boat. So the timing for this project is, in my point of view, very good. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Morten. Then we move forward to the next presentation by Frode Degvold, who will discuss how to transform to a more sustainable future. Now there's a rapidly narrowing window of opportunity to ensure a livable and sustainable future for all of us. And the NMBU Sustainability Arena Towards explore how we can challenge the business as usual and transform from the current unsustainable development patterns towards climate resilient development. By exploring a local on-campus effort to implement green technology along with social change, this arena illustrates how NMBU research and teaching together can help us pursue more sustainable pathways. So Frode, please.
Thank you. I will present to you some of the activities from our arena the last year and a half. And I will share with you some reflections from that. And those reflections aim to point in the direction of this ambitious title of the presentation. On a daily basis, I'm teaching at the Department of Landscape Architecture within spatial planning, landscape design, landscape technology, and procurement. From a sustainability perspective, which you can see also corresponds to some of the objectives in our arena. Just outside this wall behind me, you find Bua. This modest shed has a central location at NMBU. And Bua is a community in the sense of a social unity with commonality such as this place and their values, which evolve around ecological food and products. And this place is their sales point. And it also has the potential of being their activity hub as well. From experience, many foreign short-term students volunteer as retail sales staff. due to the possibility of interacting with visitors and customers, both from NMBU and locals. The need for upgrade is obvious. The structure is reaching end of service. It is freezing cold inside in chill weather, and it lacks running water, which is essential when handling food products. And the plot is neither optimal for growing crops nor social activities. NMBU has the expertise on all these fields in different faculties and departments. And when towards got to know BUA, their values and their visions for this place, we decided to engage with them. So, how do we transform from the current situation to the desired future? What actions and which actors are required? This figure from project theory illustrates the typical process of a construction project that the students learn. And to simulate practice, we set up a project like this last semester with BUA as a case. At that point, BUA was past step 1. BUA's needs have been evaluated and recognized. And BUA themselves had also done an extensive work on the concept development. They have listed the site and building, wants and needs to identify the scope of work to be designed. They have developed a concept design from an interdisciplinary student competition, and they have a preliminary budget. On our hand, we defined a project organization, including required stakeholders, and to give the project a clear direction, we refined the goals. As you can see, NMBU will benefit from some or even all of these effects. And hence, I tend to place the project ownership with NMBU. That's debatable. The students were engaged for the schematic design, and they could assign as team leaders or project members based on their interest. And the topics included stormwater management, soil conditions, plant selection, circular economy, and budgeting. And even some interdisciplinary topics like construction, energy and water supply systems. To represent the interdisciplinarity in this phase, we tracked relevant competence in different departments and faculties here at NMBU, and we also invited some external resources. They represented a consulting team in the organization. Making those individuals' involvement fit our course schedule and budget on relatively short term, we had to rely on linking to similar interest and commitment, working around set structures and fitting it to set schedules, possibly even budgets. Thankfully, such interest was to be found. This student project was completed last December, and they produced a great amount of project documents on their topics that hopefully will be beneficial in the further process of renovating BUA. The way the project was set up and the learning outcome was also well received by the students. So what did I learn from this? Clear goals are essential. Engagement and close interaction is required. Speaking of steps, I'll make a giant one and zoom out to another towards previous works to include in my reflections. Prior to the BUA project, towards was involved in the IPCC report 2022. And this figure from the report illustrates how climate-resilient development pathways are the result of cumulative societal choices and actions on multiple arenas. The term arenas is based on social and political theory, emphasizing that these arenas can be either temporary or enduring, and they are often spatially bounded. And a community is such an arena. NMBU are more of these. This figure from the same chapter illustrates how the interaction of societal actors in these arenas are characterized by various dynamic mechanisms. Inclusion levels vary depending on the impact of power and politics on access and influence in these arenas. Supporting system transitions required for climate-resilient development is contingent of the engagement of actors, institutions, and enabling conditions. Enabling governance systems are crucial for achieving system transitions and transformations. And additionally, it's essential to recognize that power is not only tied to access to resources and the ability to constrain the actions of others, but also includes the ability to produce knowledge. And that's the green figure, leading to climate actions, whereas the red illustrates how interactions characterized by domination of some actors over others lead to societal choices away from CRD, or business as usual. So, what are my reflections on this? With reference to the construction project scheme in the previous slide, BUA is still on step 2. 2 years after the needs were recognized and many years after they first were expressed. And we still have a relatively long way to go. Even though time factor isn't crucial in this case, it intrigues me to reflect upon why this process isn't more lean. We have key actors engaged, we have the knowledge and technology, and we have policy support. What about the enabling conditions? Is it fair to say that the way we facilitate for interaction between actors across arenas here and in practice is business as usual? That also applies to the project model that I implemented in the course. To what extent are they enabling conditions and enabling transformation? That leads me back to one of the other objectives of towards. This, even applied to a small scale, should have focus. And it might be a topic for another seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Frode. Very interesting, fascinating how you use a very, very local arena just outside here to try to get more insights into extremely complex global issues. We have time for one question, I think. Anyone? Yes.
Sorry, it's an American thing to raise your hand like that. This was really interesting, and I completely agree with Finn that it's fascinating to hear basically a theoretical discussion of what should be, one would think, a very small project and how it doesn't get where it needs to go. And I just wondered if you could clarify for me, because you were too implicit at the end. So what actually is the primary hindrance for success here?
The easiest for me is to refer to this project model, because that's something I know. And the way it's set up, I mean, it's phases and it's milestones. It's sort of it's go and stop. That itself is sort of time consuming. And the other one is how we include people in a project like this, because we set up different organizations for each phase. Some actors stick with the project all the way through, some come and go. And that also means that we not necessarily achieve the type of ownership to the project that we actually need to keep it flowing. And to the other question, which is with question marks, I mean, the way we set up our budget models at NMBU, the way we organize at NMBU, is that the best way to sort of utveksle competence, to implement the technology we actually have the knowledge of in a project like this, or can we work differently? It's basically what I would like to do a bit more research on. Because I know, I mean, just the exercise of seeking this competence that we need in a project like this, it shows me that, I mean, we have all of it here at NMBU, so we just need to sort of make it fit into a project within a reasonable time.
So, just to be 100% clear, what I don't hear you saying is, if we just had a little more money, we could get this done.
Not necessarily. I mean, all of us have what we call faglig tid, at least in the budget. Do we secure that we actually have this faglig tid, and how can we use this faglig tid to the best of our students, to the best of developing new knowledge and so on? So that's one way to have a look. And I mean, how can we work outside these set structures? And we have different semesters, we have different courses, doesn't necessarily fit in all locations. I mean, how can we, basically do things different? Yeah, so that's...
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And now we move over to a slightly different topic, that is biotechnology. And the next speaker is Ronja Marlonsdotter Sandholm, who will present the role of microbes and insects in the fight against plastic pollution. Now, as you know, plastic is a versatile resource with a wide range of applications, but at the same time, it's hard to break down, and recycled plastics are of lesser quality than virgin plastic. So in the search for new ways to combat the plastic challenge, the arena of SmartPlast is looking to nature, that is microbes and insects, to develop biotechnological tools for recycling plastic. So please, Ronja.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Ronja, as has been introduced. I'm a PhD candidate here at NMBU with the PEP group, and today I'm going to talk about our project and how the role of microbes and insects can help us in the fight against plastic pollution. So, this work that we are doing is part of the Encyclic project. And this project is about unlocking the potential of enzymatic recycling of plastics. And this will include identifying plastic degrading organisms as well as their enzymes, and then to develop biotechnological recycling technologies based on the enzymes. We are lucky enough to be partnered with, we have great partners in our project, for example, Bellona, the environmental foundation, Aklima, the clothing manufacturer, Norner, the polymer experts, and the circular packaging cluster, or Emballasjeforeningen. And in this project, we are working towards the UN sustainability goals, which is to create new biotechnological applications, to provide biotechnological tools for the plastic industry, and in this manner stimulate the recycling in the plastic industry. And this will in turn help reduce the environmental burden of plastic, both for life below water as well as life on land. So, plastic, what is it exactly? We talk about plastic, but it's really an umbrella term for a wide variety of polymers, synthetic polymers. What they have in common is that they are moldable, they're lightweight, flexible, waterproof, And this makes them very useful for a wide range of applications. As we all know, we are surrounded by plastic, both in our daily lives, it's in the industry, it's everywhere. But their different types of plastic are determined by their molecular structure, and this gives them different properties. However, while plastic is immensely useful, we still have the plastic challenge. Since the 1950s, over half of all produced plastic has been discarded, either in landfills or just pollution in nature. Only a small fraction of it has been recycled. So far, we are getting better with a higher fraction being recycled. But the problem with recycling plastic is that it results in lesser quality products. And not all types of plastic can be recycled. For example, if we have composites of different types of plastic, this will not work with the technologies we have available today. So, now we are looking to nature. Even though plastic has the qualities it has that makes it resistant to biodegradation, nature has devised some tools for handling this problem. Plastic is abundant everywhere, so it's only natural that someone would find a way to use it as a food source. There have been observations for decades with bacteria that has been able to grow on plastic. But now, in the later years, we are also starting to look to insect larvae, as they have been observed to at least masticize or chew on plastic. So now it's very interesting to see if they can actually break it down on a molecular level. And now with more technologies available for us and better technologies for analyzing the way they are breaking down this plastic, we are now able to really look into this issue. So for example, we have the larvae of the greater wax moth and the lesser wax moth, which have been observed to eat plastic. And this might be because their natural diet is beeswax, which is a kind of natural plastic. So it has similar structure. Also, their gut bacteria is interesting, if they are helping with the degradation or not. And we also have other sites that are potential plastic degraders, such as this picture here with the toothbrushes. It's from Flisa, where Jordan dumped a bunch of toothbrushes in the 70s and 80s. But first, they started the project. It has been going on for 50 years, which is nice. And also, we have a bacterial isolate. It's a single bacteria that was isolated from wild bee egg chambers. So yeah, these are just some of the potential enzyme resources or sources. So, but what are enzymes? They are proteins that are produced by living organisms, such as the larvae and the bacteria. And we also produce enzymes, but we cannot eat plastic, as far as I know. They are encoded by genes in our genome. And the enzymes, they act as catalysts for specific biochemical reactions. This means that they make the reaction go much faster and basically enabling life. This can be breaking down food or building new cell components. They have a lot of jobs. So, back to the bacteria, to the toothbrush landfill. Here we have done some sampling, and it's really encouraging because here you can see the curves. There is growth on only plastic, which means they can survive and thrive on polyethylene, which is a good sign. We also have the wild bee egg bacterium. It also grows on only plastic. So this is a good starting point. Now, we need to look for the enzymes that are actually responsible for breaking down the plastic. So with the toothbrush landfill example, we have sampled soil, and then we put the soil into a medium or a liquid that only contains plastic. There is no other carbon source that the bacteria can use to survive. And in this way, we select the microbes that are actually breaking down the plastic. And now that we have these microbes, we can go further into the analysis to identify the enzymes. And this we do through a multi-omics approach, which means we sequence the genomes or the DNA, and we identify the proteins that are produced when they are degrading the plastic. And in this way, we can find enzyme candidates. So, DNA sequencing, it's an important first step. We are sequencing the genomes of all potential plastic degraders, including the larvae and the microbes. And the genomes are used as a database when we are looking at the enzymes themselves. But we can't only use the genes that are present in the genome, because there are thousands. This is an example of the isolate that I'm working on. It's pretty small, it's a bacterium, so, but it still has 3,500 genes, some of which we know the function of, some of which we don't. But now we need the information about the proteins. So this is why we use the combined information of the genes and proteins to identify enzyme candidates. And this we do by growing the microbes of interest on plastic, and then compare it to the same microbe that is grown on, for example, sugar. In this way, the proteins or enzymes that are present in one or in the plastic degrading conditions and not in the other are good candidates that we can look further into. And now the question is, when we have identified these enzymes, how do they actually break down the plastic? And does the organism actually use the plastic as a carbon source or as food? Does it metabolize the plastic? And also, which is an important part of this project, is to move on to enzyme engineering, which is to optimize the plastic degradation by the enzymes by engineering it from its original state to a more effective state. So, as for now, we have mainly been looking at polyethylene, but we are going to move forward by looking for enzymes that are able to degrade other types of plastics as well, from both the insect larvae and from the microbes. And as I mentioned, it's important that we engineer these enzymes to act optimally and as fast as possible, because we want to use these enzymes on a larger scale, in industrial applications and in actual plastic recycling. And for this to happen, we need them to do their job well and fast. So yeah, I just want to finish off by thanking everyone who is part of my project, especially Sabina, who is my main supervisor, and SmartPlast for all their support and continued cooperation, and our project partners, and of course, the Research Council of Norway, who is funding this adventure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronja. This is a very fascinating and very promising project. So it's also fascinating to see these toothbrushes at Flisa that really has attracted attention from different sources of media. I'm not sure if this was a strategic plan or not, but it certainly helped, so that's good.
No,
So
but that's how we found it was a news article. It was so it's a fun story actually with the toothbrushes. So I can understand why media is interested.
good. I think we are running a bit late, so but we have time for one question over there.
Thank you very much. Fascinating. I imagine this is of interest also internationally, this kind of work. Are you collaborating with other scientific institutions around the world who must also be looking at similar issues, perhaps with different organisms? Are there any synergies going on internationally on this project?
Yeah, we are. I'm not sure if they are officially collaborator, but we have other institutions which we talk with and to compare notes and so, and as you say, it's internationally. This is it's very in the wind. A lot of work on this type of projects is going on. So also a lot of competition, but we should collaborate, I think, because we need to solve this challenge, right? Yeah, but if anyone has any more questions, I'm here at 12 and on the stand. Yeah, just for information.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks again, Ronja. Okay, now we move on to a presentation from the newest sustainability arena we have, sustainable food systems. And we'll hear more about a new master's program for sustainable food systems from two master students, Malin Kyrkjeide Neteland and Milo Schultes. So in anticipation of the new master's program for sustainable food systems, students from the course SDG 300, Sustainable Development Goals in Plant and Animal Food Systems, will present and share their final project with us, as well as their learning experience in this SDG 300. Now, in the course, the task was to analyze and redesign an existing food system, and as their case study, they chose the food system of Inuits in Canada. Now, this is a food system that has changed over the years, making the Inuits face different challenges when it comes to food security, cultural knowledge, and health. Now, the students' aim was to redesign the food system into a more sustainable and circular version and relate it to the SDGs in terms of synergies and trade-offs between them. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That was a very thorough introduction. The thing is, Hanne Fjerdingby Olsen, which is the coordinator for the new master's program, she was supposed to be here today, but she couldn't. So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction of the new master's program that is to come. Today, we're going to give an example of things that could be part of such a program. We're going to present a case study that we got the opportunity to investigate when we were students of the course SDG 300 this January. But I unfortunately don't know that much about the structure and the plans for this program. But I'm sure that you all can send Hanne an email when she is back at work and available. What me and Malin are here to present today is what we did during this course. It takes us a bit away from Norway, but as we are all part of a globalized world, it is still very relevant to achieve food security in all places all over the world. So we focused on the Canadian Inuit food systems, which have been undergoing a lot of change and transformation, partly due to Western innovations and modernization, but also due to climate change, which, as we all know, is a large majority of that is due to Western innovations and technological advancements. So traditionally, the Inuits in Canada sustained themselves by seasonally harvesting food from the land, so they relied on what was available. Food like whales and seals and caribou and fish were quite common in their diets, and they didn't really rely on any other food sources than animal protein and animal fats. Occasionally during summers they also harvested berries, but it was very much based on country food and what was available on the land. Community sharing and cultural values were at the center of their societies, and today, however, this has changed. So due to these Western innovations and influences that have made their way into their system, and also due to government policies and governance differences and new structures, their food system has changed quite drastically. So today they rely on a dual food system where they also buy import foods that has been transported from the mainland into their communities. This import food is not very accessible to them as it is very high in price, and it's also nutritionally not very rich and fulfilling because it's very processed. The food that is nutritionally rich is not accessible because of the price. And as the Inuits are still in a very low wage economy, they can't really make their way around this. There's also a problem with linearity in this food system, as food is pretty much just produced, as in harvested from the land or bought in the stores and then consumed, and there's not really a recycling going on or any kind of local sovereignty. So all of these problems and all of this linear structure has caused food insecurity to be very present and relevant for Inuits in Canada. And this is what we tried to assess and change in our in this course. So we tried to implement a bit of more sustainable and local initiatives in the Inuit food systems, and focused on making these proposed redesigns acknowledge the SDGs proposed by the UN, which we all know very well. Yes, so that's what we aim to do in this course. And now Malin is going to talk more about what proposals we actually had.
The new Inuit food systems aim to achieve food security by promoting sustainable hunting among the younger generation, improving education about harvesting and nutrition, and lowering the prices of healthy food. Furthermore, the introduction of agriculture will increase Inuit food sovereignty and security. The traditional harvest of food from the land will be enabled by financial support from the national government, and this despite the high prices of gasoline, technology, and the equipment needed for hunting. The agricultural projects will be done in greenhouses made from recycled shipping containers. This way of doing agriculture has already been tried out in Arctic environments and seems promising. By increasing agriculture in the Inuit communities, the aim is that heavily processed food will be less consumed, and instead the consumption of fresh fruit and vegetables is increased. We also aim to increase knowledge sharing, both about hunting and the use of versatile ingredients from the greenhouses. Knowledge sharing will be carried out by mentoring programs, and we hope that this will increase the transfer of knowledge about hunting from one generation until the next one. And traditional foods, they include mostly animal-sourced products, and many Inuits lack therefore the knowledge on how to cook with versatile ingredients. Therefore, knowledge sharing will be done more professionally, with volunteers holding participatory classes where people get introduced to new ingredients and how to process them. In the redesigned food system, Inuit cultures will be integrated in the governance system. And this is important because Inuit have a flexibility and adaptivity which form the backbone of their culture. Inuit people have expertise, knowledge, and traditions to form their own definitions of sustainability. And it's therefore not fit for them to rely solely on global or national governance. In terms of maintaining or achieving food security, it is vital for Inuit communities to have the ability to practice their traditional ways of obtaining food, which can be made possible by not imposing regulations on the access to the land and the game hunted on. And when redesigned, the new Inuit food system will be circular. At the top, we have good governance, education, and sustainability as a basis. There will still be a need for import, but with agriculture, the need for import will be reduced. Subsidy programs and other types of financial support will focus on healthy food, agricultural products, and hunting. And the food waste will be recycled into compost that will be used in agricultural projects.
So by implementing these changes to the system, we hope to address many SDGs, and hopefully by prioritizing some of them, we will create synergies and automatically also have influence in other areas and target issues. Like Malin mentioned, the core pillars of our change are good governance, education, and climate action, or sustainability, as we said it in the last slide. And we hope that these three are going to be the most influential in having an impact on other SDGs as well. For example, establishing all of these three will automatically provide Inuits with more food sources and sustainable ways of obtaining their food and growing their food locally. So the SDG 2, addressing zero hunger, will be acknowledged. Similarly, responsible consumption and production will be promoted by having these local initiatives promoting food sovereignty, and good health and well-being will also be improved by providing more nutritious food to Inuits. However, we also need to acknowledge that there will be trade-offs. For example, by acknowledging SDG 12, which is about consumption and production, we essentially have an output or some kind of emissions. There will always be some kind of emissions when introducing new production, ways of production to a society. So this might have an impact on climate action and life below water and life on land. And also implementing these agricultural projects that Malin mentioned will have an impact on climate action as we introduce new structures and infrastructure that will need some construction and will have an impact on emissions. However, we conclude that the synergies are worth more than the trade-offs, especially since food security and food sovereignty they are at the heart of the well-being of humanity and the functioning of these communities. So we concluded that these innovations and proposals for redesign are worth it, and that the synergies weigh more than the trade-offs.
Yeah, and then we have some conclusions after taking the SDG course in January. And in this course, there has been learning opportunities through group discussion and also discussion in the classroom. And when creating groups, Hanne made sure that in each group there were people with different academic backgrounds. And this created interdisciplinary knowledge sharing. And there was also great creative freedom when we were choosing what kind of project we were doing. And we got a lot of frequent feedback from both Hanne and other students. And the key takeaway we got from this course is that we got great insight into the complexity of food systems. We got to experience the importance of interdisciplinary in research aimed to achieve sustainability. And we also learned that we need to prioritize and how we can prioritize when implementing SDGs. Yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Malin and Milo. Very fascinating project, and I'm impressed by what you've achieved in a not too long time. I think we have time for one or two questions, if anyone wants to.
I fear the Americans are dominating the questions here, but nobody else jumped to. I was curious if you've had any chance to reach out to any Inuit communities at all and communicate and kind of meter any interest or demand for this kind of initiative from the communities themselves. Thanks.
No, we haven't done that. Like, most of our information is from scientific papers. There has been done a lot of case studies because of how the Inuits are so in a so different situation from the rest of Canada. So, but yeah, it would have been really interesting to actually talk with some of the Inuits.
We also realized that this is an indigenous community and that those are especially prone to or vulnerable to having external inputs imposed on them. So these are just proposals from us as non-indigenous people, which should be considered. So that would definitely, I think, make the research more credible and also appropriate. But so far we haven't had the chance.
One more? Yes, also.
I'm not sure how to word this well, but I assume there might be similar, not situations, but problemstillinger in relation to indigenous communities across the world, like for example in Norway even, and in Australia, for example, with the indigenous population there. Have you looked at maybe comparing or looking at any similarities there?
We have not. And I think partly due to, I think the Inuits are quite unique in their ways of sustaining themselves with food and their food production. But it would definitely be relevant to compare with other Inuit or other indigenous communities as well. But we didn't have the chance to do that. At least not as part of the course, but maybe in future research or future projects. So thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, so now you have at least 2 suggestions for your next part of this project, which is good. Okay, thanks again for your contribution. And now we will have a short break. I'm not sure what time it is. I don't have my glasses here, but I think we have a break until 10:30. So have some coffee, some oranges, and some chatting, and we start again 10:30. Now the next person out is Thomas Røkås, who will define a safe and just operating space for the Norwegian economy. So how does Norwegian economy look like within the donut? Based on activities in the sustainability arena planetary boundaries, researchers map out Norway's social and ecological priorities within the donut economic sustainability framework. The arena demonstrates that Norway's high social performance occurs at a high ecological cost by overshooting planetary boundaries, a contradiction to Norway's international reputation as having a green economy. Please, Thomas.
Okay, hello. Thank you. So I'm going to present to you some content from an article I'm writing with my supervisor, Erik Bagetun. So this is based on my master thesis, which I did last year. So I graduated from NMBU last year. So I'm just going to jump into it because I have a lot of stuff. So just a little bit of background. So the global economy, it has manifolded the last decades. And alongside this economic growth had also come the growth in the use of natural resources. And Earth system scientists today, they predict that we are already transgressing safe planetary boundaries, as you see in the figure here. We're using excess amounts of natural resources on a global scale, but still, social inequality is actually increasing internationally. So, do we need a new economic paradigm? Well, that's the idea with the donut economics framework, which you see here to the right. It envisions a safe and just operating space for humanity within ecological and social limits. So it is based on the 9 planetary boundaries, the concept, as you saw in the figure on the last slide. In the outer circle, you see the ecological ceiling, and 12 social priorities from the Sustainable Development Goals. In the inner circle, the social foundation. And if we respect these limits, we can ensure healthy ecosystems and a dignified life for all. So the concept has become quite popular both in science and in policy, and many want to use it at subglobal scales to make it relevant for policymakers. But it is a challenge to downscale because of ecosystems. Many are spatial because of spatial temporalities of ecosystems. The concepts of cost shifting, ecological and social cost across borders, and that the perceptions of a good life, they differ across space, right? So we try to tackle some of these issues in the paper and ask how a safe and just space can be defined for the Norwegian economy, and also how the Norwegian economy performs related to such a safe and just space. Just a little bit of the theory and concepts behind. Regarding ecological limits, we make a clear distinction, and an important distinction between physical and normative limits. Physical limits you can observe in nature through, for example, ecological thresholds, which are points where an ecosystem change abruptly to a less productive and a degraded state, as you see in the figure. While normative limits, for example, planetary boundaries, they are defined by us humans at the safe space towards thresholds, so that we do not transgress them, and so that we not degrade ecosystems. So regarding the planetary boundaries, they can be downscaled either through a top-down or a bottom-up approach. And the Earth systems that are more globally systemic, for example, climate change and ocean acidifications, they are recommended to be downscaled using a top-down approach, while the Earth system and systems that are more spatially heterogeneous, they should be defined using a bottom-up approach. So we have done this here and made a methodological framework. I'm not going to go into the detail, but it's an important distinction. And so we try to find sort of relevant boundary criteria by looking at existing national policy frameworks that we have in climate pledges, in different directives and so on, to make the safe space relevant for Norway. Also regarding the social limits, so Kate Rabert, the author of the Donut Economics book, she used 20 indicators to measure the 12 social priorities from the SDGs, and she defines a threshold for each dimension at 0%, meaning that no one should fall short of these social priorities, right? And also 2 of the dimensions are social and gender equality. Now, usually other authors, they operationalize these dimensions only through single indicators, but here we take a bit broader approach. We want to integrate them into all of the other 10 dimensions, health, education, and so on, because they are important aspects, we think. Also, this UN SDG approach can be told to be a basic approach towards human needs. They are universal criteria for well-being, but you can also take a relative approach towards human needs, which we do here in our paper by integrating national policy frameworks, action plans, social targets, and so on, to make the just space relevant for Norway and our social challenges. So when we find all of our indicators, our control variables, I'm not going to show them, but then we gathered some data from both national, international data sets and databases, and also replicated some data from some scientific articles. When we have this, we can visualize the Norwegian donut. And what we find, as you can see, is that Norway overshoots all its ecological boundaries in the outer circle, some much more than other, and that we have larger overshoots associated with our consumption. So the emissions that are embedded in our consumption of goods and services compared to what the emissions that we have only within our territory. And we find that if Norway is to respect its fair share of the global carbon budget to stay within 1.5 degrees warming, we need to actually produce negative emissions, almost 1,300 million tons CO2 equivalent, which is quite an extreme difference towards today's goals and pledges. But these are based on a completely different way of sharing the global environmental resources, right? And also to avoid the widespread ocean acidification, Norway needs to produce a negative emission equal almost 450 million tons CO2. But as you see in the inner circle, there's not very few shortfalls. So we do quite well socially, generally. But if we look, so these are the data, there's not too many. So percentages above 100% are people falling short of the dimensions to the left. But if we disaggregate on gender, we see there's some more differences. The male population are falling a bit shorter for food, education, health, while the female population is falling shorter for peace and justice and political voice. But the largest sort of inequities are across migrant groupings. So the first and second generation migrants are falling much shorter for some of these dimensions where we have data compared to the remaining population in the table all the way to the right. For example, the income dimension, almost half of migrant children live in poverty in Norway, or what we say consistent low-income households, right? So we can also look at these social dimensions from the 1990s and up until today. So the green line is the just space, and we see that Norway has provided more people with education, clean energy, and political voice, but has not been able to sort of close the gap for some, as the majority of the dimensions have sort of remained stable just above the just space. And actually, some more people fall shorter for income and food. If you look at the ecological trend, first of all, we lack a lot of data on the time series that are for the more heterogeneous systems, but we see that if we look at the accumulated emissions, which is also a different approach to account emissions, Norway transgress its boundary related to climate change in 2006, and for ocean acidification in 2014. So, some of our results, and from this, we can say that Norway overshoots ecological boundaries at the expense of meeting social standards, no? And this notion sort of deviates, especially regarding the ecological resources, deviates from Norway's reputation as having a green economy internationally. We are being praised in many sustainable indexes and so on. But we discussed that this is due to the current weak sustainability measurements that are being used today, which disregards the shifts of environmental costs in the global economy across borders. So we can, for example, we can take the example of electric cars. These comes to Norway with very little environmental liabilities. The environmental risks and damages that occur in the supply chains before they arrive here are occurring towards populations and countries out there, right? Disrupting social communities, polluting waters, airs, and so on. Also, the current carbon accounting regime, according to the UNFCCC, it's based on production-based emissions, the emissions we produce within our country. And this is very favorable to Norway and other already industrialized countries. But if you look at the consumption-based emission, Norway has a significant higher impact. So these sort of regimes are very favorable towards the Norwegian economy, and it's also why we sort of it's possible to maintain its green reputation. Just to conclude, so we find that in our paper that it's possible to make the safe and just space relevant for the national economy, to operationalize it within existing national policy frameworks, while maintaining sort of the integrity of the original concepts. And we find that Norway overshoots all the assessed planetary boundaries while achieving high social standards for its population in general. And we find that this notion deviates from Norway's reputation as having a green economy, although it can continue having so due to the current weak sustainability measurements in the global economy. That was a bit rushed, I'm sorry about that, but here's some references and some sources, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Thomas. This is really important work. It really underlines the inherent conflicts when dealing with these different sustainability questions. And I must say, it makes me a tiny bit worried when I listen to you. But anyway, do we have a question from the audience? Also within the Nordic contingency. What about the American contingency?
I spent 30 years learning how to wait for Norwegians to ask questions. It just requires patience. Thanks for that presentation, Thomas. That was really important and engaging. And I wondered if you're looking ahead to make policy recommendations.
Yeah. So I actually presented this at Donut Festival, which was arranged last year, first time, and now I'm in the group of planning for the program for next year, or for this year. And there I presented it, and there was a lot of interest from local policy makers, from especially MDG, the party. And in my paper, I sort of make a framework that it's sort of suggested to for policymakers to sort of make, to integrate the donut into the local sort of policy work. And I presented it at Grønn Torsdag. It's a podcast, so that's out now if you want to look a bit more into detail into the. So it is a lot of interest out there, but it is also when you go into the details, it's also very complex and it's very difficult to sort of use it actually in practice. So that needs more development, I think. But already, I think you can have. It's a powerful sort of framework, and it has some. I think it needs to be developed more. But I think there are interests there at the local level. I think it can have an impact at the local level as well to sort of use it, define the boundaries, like within. Sort of the knowledge that we have, but also sort of socially, like what are a good life for us at Ås, in Tønsberg, whatever. Right? So I think it's a good tool to sort of to engage. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas, for a very solid and interesting presentation. I'm just curious, what's your plan to do next when this is published, and how do you intend to use it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to use it, and it would be very nice to try to have to work with it, maybe in a PhD or some other kind of project. Right now, I was just hired a month ago in a private bank, of all things, which I'm working as a sustainability advisor for a year. So I'm moving between different sort of groups of interest and with different practices, obviously. So I think it's very important to work across these academia, civil society, business. We cannot operate on different grounds. We really need to unite. So I want to be a bridge builder between a lot of these organizations and businesses and so on. So how I can do that, I don't know now, but I'm going to figure it out, I think, hopefully.
I love it.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Again. Okay, so the next speaker out is Håkon Mella, who will present how sustainability is seeded and cultivated through the school garden. So the Skolehagen, or School Garden in Ås, is an initiative created through the sustainability arena GreenSmart, led by NMBU School Garden and Vitenparken. It is an impactful and active learning environment, an arena for both young and old, where knowledge about nature, ecosystems, and food production is connected to our everyday life. Please, Håkon.
Hello. Yes. First, I will just say that I'm a split person in a way, because I have one foot at the Department of Educational Science, and the other foot is here at Vitenparken. Yes. Vitenenga is our school garden here at Campus Ås. It got established a few years ago and is still growing. It is an initiative between Vitenparken, NMBU, the Department of Educational Science, and GreenSmart. So this is where we get our fundings. School gardens has a long history in Norway, about 100 years. And in the early years, it was more about food production. And then it got a decline in the 80s because of the economic downturn. And now it is growing again. We see that school gardens are rising from the ground. It's a lot of activity and interest in many cities and municipalities. But there is no national strategy or public political focus on this. We see that the curriculum renewal in the schools with the new national teaching plans are driving many of the schools to start school gardens. And it fits perfectly. You can see that all the school disciplines can connect. It has also a big opportunities for interdisciplinarity. We see the three main themes: democracy and citizenship, public health and life mastery, and sustainable development can be worked with in the school garden. We see that school gardens give a holistic school approach. It impacts public health. We see that the children eat more fruit and vegetables, and also that they show courage to taste new types of food when they have grown it themselves. And we see that children, they really need to be physically involved in the processes of seeding, harvesting, cooking, and eating to be interested in what they do and to get the knowledge. So we can see that the school garden is seeding sustainability. And not just physically in the ground, but also in the body and mind. We see better mental and emotional health among the kids. They are building a sense of community. There are big social and cultural benefits from the school garden. It gives connections to the cycles of life, perfectly visualized between from the soil to table and back again. And it gives you a place in the environment, and also maybe, if to put it out really far, in the universe and the local society. It is practical sustainability, it's meaningful, and the children learn to respect nature and also others' work. And it gives more opportunities for students to learn. The school garden can be a place to make the invisible and abstract more clear and evident. It connects different disciplines. It connects to local society, to local businesses. It connects and gives more, how to say it, insight in rural agriculture and the agriculture industry between children and students, and also between the employees in the institutions, and also to the public. Here at NMBU, we have different courses for teachers' education, etc. And we have waiting lists now. You see that school gardens also can help universities become more sustainable, both environmentally, with circular thinking, and also socially, and economical. Here at Vitenparken, we use it for education and public communication. It's like a perfect window to show that. And we also grow food for our own cafe, and we try to recycle whatever we can back to the school garden, so we can show the full cycle of food production and how it can be done. As mentioned, you can see that it gives possibility to involve everyone in the institution, from students to the workers or the chefs. And I can also see that it can connect all the work packages in the Green Smart, and maybe also the sustainable arenas at NMBU. We also see that in the national strategy for urban agriculture, that school gardens can be connected to all the packages there. And now I really want you all to take a deep breath and just think that the air we breathe now, it contains less oxygen and more CO2 now than it did when we were kids. And that we really see that climate change is now, and here we are. And I'm wondering how you got here and how you got that spark for working for a more sustainable future. Did you get it through a school garden? I didn't. So here is a short personal tale from me. I started in the hunting fields of my childhood, where I was more unconsciously connected. It was more the emotions and senses that showed me the way. I got connected in the forest and in my grandmother's kitchen garden. And in the library, I was lucky that I had access to these arenas. And I found all these connections that made me glow. This book is translated to Klara sjøl, how should we translate it? How to Survive in Norwegian Nature. I borrowed it from the library when I was about 10 years old, I think, and I still have it in my bookshelf. I never turned it back. But then I grew up to become a young adult, I will say, and I went astray into the asphalt jungle, into the grey city in a way. I lost my mom, and then I was also so lucky I found deep ecology through this guy, and I found back again to myself. I got more theoretical knowledge. I started to cook, it was to pay my studies, but also because it was a deep thing, a voice inside myself that drove me there. And also I started to grow my own food in the city, and made me connect back again. And I could see that everything I had learned, like all the knowledge, theoretical knowledge, it made sense in that moment when I connected theory with practical work with nature and people. I understood that I can make a difference, and I also understood that photosynthesis is also addictive magic, and it affects CO2 levels too. So here I am, and here we are, and it's been a long way to get there for many of us, I guess, like me. But I wish I had the chance to get shaped faster by a school garden when I grew up. And I hope we can give our young ones the same chance. So I want you to taste sustainability. These are the future farmers and chefs, teachers, politicians, doctors, architects, and city planners. The list goes on, and we can give them a start of a sustainable art. So here we see the dreams of our future. We cultivate them and nourish them with curiosity and hope. And from there, we will grow sustainable cities and societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Håkon, for sharing your personal journey. It makes, of course, your message much stronger. And it's also the school garden is really, I think, a fantastic example of how a small, quite simple, and not too expensive local initiative can really make a difference. So I highly support this project.
Great.
Good. Any questions, comments?
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. You said there was a waiting list. Could you tell a little bit more about the feedback from the people that already gone through the courses?
Yes, a little bit. I could say that a lot of the teachers says that it's they get information that it's hard to get, or they have to collect it from many places, and it's hard to get it in one place. But that NMBU, our courses are really, how to say it, unique in that way. They get to learn through the seasons and to do a lot of practical work in the education program. And that differs from a lot of other courses in the same arena, I would say.
Are you also in dialogue with other schools in order to sort of scale up this offer?
Yes, we have. It's a lot of interest, but then it gets also back to funding and the money issue. But we have now, just today actually, we have a course here for teachers from the Steiner network and also from the Montessori network, and we also have a big network here locally in Ås Vestby with the public schools, where we have regular meetings and courses. And now we also have started up on the west side of Norway, a new course there, and also in Lillestrøm, but that is more into food and health, like mat og helse and the science of nature.
Okay, thank you very much again. So that concludes the presentations from the 6 sustainability arenas that we have. A taste from each of them, highlighting both the complexity and the different topics that the arenas work on, all the way from super local projects just behind the wall here to the highly global issues that we work on. Now, before lunch, we'll have the keynote of today, which will be by Kristine Spiten and NMBU Professor Elin Kubberud. Kubberud is a program director of the successful and nationally unique master's program in entrepreneurship and innovation here at NMBU. I'm sure many of you know her well. Kristine Spiten, probably many of you know her as well. She is an NMBU alumni, holding a master's degree in industrial economics and management from here. After finishing here, she started Blue Eye Robotics. She's been working on the World Wildlife Fund, fighting plastics in the ocean, and is now hired by Fearnley Securities. And Christina has also been very visible in the media, in different media, nationally and internationally over the last years. For instance, being shortlisted on different rankings when it comes to tech founders or young leaders in Norway and beyond. So this keynote will actually be a conversation between the two of you / presentation. I'm not sure entirely how it will be, but I'm looking forward to it. So I'm welcome you, both of you, up to the stage now, please.
Thank you all. It's been very interesting to hear about all the effort that is done through the sustainability arenas. And we're pretty sure that NMBU is well placed to solve some of the major global challenges that we're currently facing. And however, there are some challenges that we also face in terms of developing this competence in our graduates. The first challenge is to move beyond the disciplinary approach, promoting a more holistic, inclusive approach, focusing on developing the overall competence of our graduates. And if we go to the candidate surveys, it's said there that 50% actually of our candidates say that it's very important to develop sustainability as an overarching competence, and it's very relevant for their professional life. working life, but still only 40% say that they have, in fact, obtained such a competence. So, Christine, that leaves, what did you do in terms of developing this competence? You combined technology studies at Realtech, didn't you? With a lot of other things while being in a university. Maybe you could tell us a little more how you encountered this and how you solve all the challenges on the way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for me, I was a student here at the master program for industrial economics and leadership from 2010 till 2015. And while I loved diving into physics and to the theory, I quite quickly understood that I needed to try it out and to test all the theory that we learned along the way. And there are not much internships or practice throughout those 5 years of studies unless you seek it out yourself. Second year of my studies, I found out that there's something called a Gründerskolen, or entrepreneur school, where you can travel abroad. Either at that point it was either to Houston, to San Francisco, or to South Africa. And I really wanted to go to San Francisco because that was, where innovation at the time was really blooming and evolving. So I signed up for this course, or the intro course about entrepreneurial school, and knocked on the door and went down into one of these other faculties that I didn't actually belong to. But I was told that I was 1 year too early. I had to complete my bachelor degree first before I could apply for this opportunity. So I used that 1 year from my second year to the third to really prepare and to dive into innovation and to sustainability on the side of my curriculum and technology studies. I got to learn, got to know quite a few professors who had projects on the side of their teaching practices, which we as students could take part in. At that point, we were also starting up the robotics lab here at NMBU. And I just ate it all. I took everything I could get.
She was a course crasher at our faculty as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she actually tried to get into our program.
But I wasn't allowed to.
No.
From the boss at my faculty. But the way I viewed it as a student, you enroll to a program, and there's a certain set or menu of topics that you can pick from. But in my optics, that was more a kind suggestion. It's
a menu.
It's a menu, yeah. But they didn't show the full buffet. No. So I started to knock on the doors of these other faculties, and I think curiosity was my drive or my power. But I really wish that the doors were more open, that it was more visible to all of the students, without them having to break up the doors or crash the courses or necessarily investigate those opportunities themselves or seek them out, but that there were more projects across the faculties where the students got to work together as well, and more opportunities to test out all the theory that we learn. And I think however, I think I was lucky because I think what I did, kind of skiing slalom amongst these different courses and opportunities, I don't think that would be possible at NTNU or University in Oslo, according to friends of mine who has been studying there. So I think NMBU has a really good opportunity to become that university, or where you can really combine some interesting and relevant courses and prepare for whatever you dream to work with and how you want to contribute to a sustainable future. That being using technology, or innovate, or
So it's actually important we know that we are already a very cross-disciplinary university. And I think that when we talk about these sustainability arenas, we are really good at combining our knowledges, and we have different projects and different programs even that combine natural sciences with social sciences. And still, there are some challenges how we can instill the mindset that you were looking for, and that you orchestrated all this yourself. You said it was a menu that you could actually pick from, and it's quite easy here at NMBU to do that. But still, there's some challenges, because we need to think how we teach and how we educate students for sustainable development, and to help them to pave the road out. And as a university, we can talk about education for sustainable development on several layers. We can talk about how we transmit expert knowledge to students, and about many problems, and how we develop courses that offer students to analyze and to identify challenges in sustainable development. This represents what we call teaching about sustainable development. And it's the teacher who is the expert and the most empowered person in the process, in the learning process. We are very good at that, and we have many excellent examples of courses which we can learn about sustainable development. But on the next level, you could say that we can train our students in gaining specific skills in order to work with sustainable development. Teaching for sustainable development rests on a more student-active approach than the formal level. And the teacher needs to think more about how these skills can be put in context and trained, and which methods to apply that the students should learn. And the students develop their know-how, but still we're usually simulating or working with cases that are close to real life. And the teacher is still the expert advisor on this level. But when you are put in a situation, and that's the most important level, teaching or educating through sustainable development. Through sustainable actions in the society, the students are empowered as change agents while still being in the university, but they're practicing in real-life context, such as in the school gardens or in innovation projects working with robotics. But they have the chance to initiate changes themselves, and through this they become change agents and practitioners of sustainable development. So this is the most important part of education for sustainable development. But it represents also a teachability dilemma, because it's difficult, and I would argue even impossible, to teach sustainable development. This has to be initiated through taking actions, and the students need to experience and reflect upon their knowledge. And by that, they will develop their competence. So by taking action and creating change, they create value for stakeholders in the society. And therefore, they are by definition entrepreneurs. Because here in this situation, the teacher is just a designer of the learning experience. Well, that also changes our role as a teacher. And when I was listening to you guys talking about all this interesting knowledge that is developed through the sustainability platform, I think this is so interesting. This needs to be accessible for our students. And what you did, Christina, you actually made it accessible by entering and asking questions and taking a lot of initiatives. So this leads us to the next question and some of the frustrations that NMBU students also sometimes have. That many of the topics that we learn about at NMBU, they are quite stressful. We are constantly identifying and analyzing the problems of sustainability. So how can entrepreneurship play a role here, Christina?
Yeah, I just want to comment on when you're talking, Ellen. We just heard a couple of excellent presentations here, and I tried to challenge Thomas on what now? How will he use this knowledge that he gained, and which is so important to share and to implement? And he said he's going to work in a private bank, and I think that's just the perfect place to integrate the knowledge that you gained from working on your thesis. And I think that's where the magic is happening, is when companies and professional organizations, policy developers, and society come together with university and try to it's so important that the knowledge and research that is born here at NMBU actually gets out there, because if not, what was it all for? I mean, it's the companies, the banks, the society needs to tap into and get access to all this research. And when you ask about how entrepreneurship play a role, I think well, I created my own job or workplace and company right after I graduated from here. I moved up to Trondheim and we established Blue Eye Robotics. And the way we did innovate and the way we were working as entrepreneurs, and I think the most important skill that I took with me into other jobs later on in WWF and now in Finn-Arne Securities is to always be sure that you are aligned with your clients' needs and the way they perceive reality. So for instance, in Blue Eye, we worked super closely with our first pilot customers, that being DNV, Hurtigruten, several NGOs, schools, and everyone who could use an underwater drone to explore, to gather data from the ocean, to inspect or to detect something underwater. Because it's so easy that you fall into that cocoon of your own perception of what you're trying to solve or what your solution is supposed to be. But you really need to tap in and have a close relation to your clients, or, you know, depending on what sector or what your workplace is, that might be students or it might be patients or doesn't matter. But get to know the users of your competence or your end product that you're contributing to developing or bringing out there. And I think today, when I work in Finn-Arne Securities, who's an investment bank, and I work closely with companies developing a huge variety of solutions within renewable energy and clean tech, that being hydrogen, batteries, aquaculture products, solar sheeps. It's a broad spectrum. But what I love about that job is to work so closely with the client and try to challenge on, you know, how are you going to really bring your solutions, your technology to the market? Because they all have huge visions. And they're set out on a big journey, that being providing the future with renewable, clean, sustainable energy or food. But how to get there, that's always a unique journey. But the one thing that's common for all of them is to know the problem from the end user's perspective. And then there's a lot of policy and there's a lot of other things along the way. But I think for me that's the curiosity, to stay curious and ask questions and try to learn as much as possible about your clients.
So for students who can actually be empowered to try to discover some of these things and be set in situations where they can be innovators and entrepreneurs during the studies, it's a liberating force for them in order to develop their competence for sustainable development. So, and I would also like to use this opportunity actually to honor some of the most successful academic entrepreneurs.
The heroes of NMBU.
Some of the heroes.
Yes.
This is not, there's a lot of other heroes that were not had a place for on this slide, but they have contributed strongly to sustainable development at NMBU, and even before the Agenda 2030 was set. So these are pioneers. But I would like to use the opportunities to also say that their efforts have little value within our system. Because when are we going to let commercialization and entrepreneurship count in our daily life as researchers? At times there actually are no formal obstacles standing in the way for us to reward their efforts in terms of academic promotions, status, hirings, or salary increase. So, how can we work with this further, Christina, as an entrepreneurial university? I think we have to rethink the role of academic entrepreneurship and the role of the TTO, and also how we can let our students get involved more with the research, with the sustainability arenas. They also state in the candidate survey that they feel that the research community is far away from them. So we should probably think a little more beyond the master thesis, beyond students being research assistants, that how can we let them get involved with all this interesting knowledge that is produced here at NMBU. Maybe not as research assistants, maybe more as surrogate entrepreneurs, working together with researchers, with academic entrepreneurs, to actually implement some of the things that we develop here, which is really great. So now we talked about this, Christina. So there's so many things happening. No coding and robotics. You talked about robotics. So everything goes so fast. So what is relevant today, it's outdated tomorrow. So what is your experience here, Christina?
I think, and I just joined this network of women in finance, which there are not so many of. And I got together with a group of girls studying at BI, and they told me that, you know, when you start on a bachelor program at BI, the business school today, they expect that you know how to code, for instance. And it's only 8 years since I graduated from NMBU, but there was no expectations that I already knew how to code. So things are happening really. Of course, I chose coding and I chose robotics and all of that, but that was kind of, we were the first ones to try on to start on a basic level using coding for simple tasks, and now they use it in quite complex finance tasks at bachelor level, and you're just supposed to learn that. If you didn't learn it at kinder school or videregående, you just go on YouTube, or you need to acquire that competence by yourself. And that's just one simple example. I think the universities and research institutions, I don't think we will ever be able to keep up with the need for skills, soft skills not least, that are out in society. So I think that's why it's so important to have that close contact with workplaces, with businesses, with society through the whole student program, whichever program you choose, because I think this is changing all the time, and that's why I took a picture of a octopus, because they are experts in nature on constantly adapting to the environment around them, and to meet, the challenges or the dangers around them. And I think we need to learn a little bit from the octopus and try to stay in touch and keep that really close connection. And doing so by inviting them in, but also putting ourselves out there, as we've talked about, ensuring that the students through those 3 years, 5 years or more get some hands-on practical experience of testing out the theory that they learn here.
What about society? We talk about lifelong learning, and the people are out in the professional life. Shouldn't they return to the university?
Yeah, in some way or another. Or the universities should make sure that there's a part of the universities where they work or where they are. I mean, there's so many ways we can do this now, ensuring that knowledge and learning is always on the top of the agenda with every company or organizations. I think, I don't think we have much choice if we want to ensure that we are creating solutions for the society, which we really need.
Yeah, and it's also interesting when we look at about the qualities or the demand for skill sets among future graduates, that if we take a look at digitalization, for instance, as you mentioned, and advanced technologies, and the changes in demand for this, it's interesting to note that the majority of the other skills, besides digital literacy, are in fact soft skills, as you mentioned. So these skill sets, as we talked about, it's difficult to measure directly, and it's impossible maybe also to teach them. But it has to be experienced, but it does not mean that it's not important to focus on them. And we need to take those very seriously if we're going to work with the wicked problems of sustainable development.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. My boyfriend or husband, actually, he's completing medicine studies in Denmark right now, and to follow his journey through that way of studying, where they're constantly training at different hospitals and training these soft skills specifically, because and it's quite obvious that a doctor needs to be able to communicate and need to be able to see their patients and to really be a human menneskeleser. Good at reading, the what can lay behind. Especially, he's now been working with the children and pain, chronic pain. But I think this goes for engineers, for technologists, for biologists, for all of us. We all need those soft skills, because whether we're fixing somebody's health or body, or working with them mentally, or developing technology that they use in life. It's the need to understand starts with good communication, I think, and to be able to, to really strengthen those soft skills and train them throughout the curriculum, or somehow integrate that into the studies. I think would be fantastic. We will all of us would benefit from that. Having a more warm society. And I think it's really interesting to see how female tech entrepreneurs are a lot more driven by that motivation to solve societal challenges rather than, getting quick rich or making something more efficient. They're more focused on solving human and societal challenges.
Yeah.
So and that's where soft skills is a huge benefit. So in creating warm technology, like the company No Isolation, Norwegian company, they create solutions both for isolated kids to bring them back into school, and make sure that they don't miss out socially as well. And also creating the Kump, which I just bought for my grandmother, making sure that she's, connected with her family and friends through a super simple and great example of warm technology device with only one button. So I love to see those examples of soft skills applied to hard tech in a way.
And now you tapped into a very important question. Not everything that is green or high-tech is inclusive. So maybe you could say something about your experience being a woman entrepreneur and sustainability agent in a highly male-dominated sector.
Yeah,
was gender an issue here for you?
I've always, except from when I was working in WWF actually, believe we were mostly women. But besides that, through school, since I chose technology and robotics, we were 4 girls and 30 boys in class. And then starting in Blue Eye, of course we wanted more girls, but we wanted the best ones, and the girls didn't apply. Or, I don't know, it's many, many places along the way where I think we really need to work, and maybe it starts in a school garden or in kindergarten to start to spark those interests. So of course we still see that there's most men in technology, there's most men in finance, not least. But I think especially when developing and innovating and creating solutions for the future, we need diversity. And it's not only between men and women, it's cultural diversity, it's a huge variety of different backgrounds we need to develop products and solutions for a society which, after all, consists of a diverse group of people. And we see a lot of examples on how technology especially is developed by white men, creating great solutions for white men, but it doesn't necessarily fit a woman or people with a completely different background. So
yeah, it's actually only 1% of women entrepreneurs within high tech in Norway, and that's quite
crazy.
low. And a long history of male dominance in this sector has created maybe a little hostile work environment. So those women who actually pursue a high technology entrepreneurship career, they've chosen to do so not because of the to maximize the investments for the possibility to earn a lot of money. They've done this for one simple motivation, and that's to change and challenge the masculinized industry from within. So their motivation is, in fact, to be an entrepreneur, to change the industry. So maybe we should leave it at that. Christine, to sum up, I see that the time is flying.
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm sure that all of you here today has big variety or different motivations to be here, but I think all of you care about sustainability and hopefully also innovation and research, and I hope that our dialogue was just maybe sparked some new ideas or thoughts within all of you, and that we can stay here and continue to talk and to learn from each other. I think it's amazing, the presentations we've seen earlier today as well. And it's clear, at least to me, that we have a long way to go in order to ensure that we really get that sustainable future which we all dream about, and which is really the only way that we can create the world that we want to live in.
But I'm glad that you find that NMBU are very relevant to solve these challenges, and that you would like to come back and discuss with us and challenge us on these things, both for doing our research and also how we should educate tomorrow's workforce. So thank you for that, Christine.
Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine and Elin. Very interesting to sit here and listen to you. I thought about many things that you mentioned, but one thing I should start with was your mentioning of the training that medical students receive. We don't have a medical faculty here, but we have a vet faculty. And also the vets, they receive some of the same kind of training during their studies. And above 90% of the vet students, they are women. So that actually could be a good way for the vet faculty to contribute to what we want to achieve. And also you highlighted the one thing is that we develop and teach knowledge, but of course to make a difference, we really need to put that knowledge into work in the society as a whole. And although we are relatively good at that, when you compare with other universities, in Norway at least, we have a long way to go, and we don't have much time. But this is, of course, a complicated issue. On the one hand, developing knowledge, on the other hand, being able to put this into use. So we need to discuss that a lot more, how to get more people here involved in putting their knowledge into use. But I'm sure that one thing you touched upon is that the students, the energy and the willingness to do things in different ways is something that really should be we should build upon. Because me, for instance, I've been working all my career to try to perfectionize one way of doing my thing. And of course, it's much harder for me, even though I want to change my way. So we need to use the students, clearly.
And also maybe, you know, the way that that PhD candidates, as at least it used to be that way, that they, during their PhD, also need to teach. What about putting them out in a business and saying that you actually also need to have an internship or to apply or to use your PhD thesis or degree somehow in a practical context. So
it's one way.
That could be.
But there's an eager person in the back here that wants to comment on this, so please do.
My name is Trine Vaslefeide. I lead the Green Smart sustainability arena, and I want to thank you very much for an interesting discussion. And I would like to point out something that I totally agree with you on, and that is, and I was very inspired by the way you maneuvered through the different faculties and found your way. Because in our Master of Urban Agriculture, which is reflected in all 7 faculties, they have a difficulty finding, getting into the courses and finding supervisors for master theses in the other faculties. And this is the silos of the faculties is something we need to break down, and I think you're an excellent example of that. So thank you very much for that challenge to NMBU.
Yeah, thank you. When I look back, that's something I'm really, grateful that it was possible. But of course, I had to put myself out there. I also remember I joined Ian Bryson, who's a professor here at NMBU. And he's a marine ecologist, and he had a trip where he took the students to Tanzania and Zanzibar to learn about coastal management, and I thought that's the perfect place to, after I finished my master, but to bring my little underwater drone and to test it out in practice with the University of Dar es Salaam. But the only way I could join that course was if I was the professor's assistant. So, so I said, great, I'll be your assistant, and then joined that course, and it was a unforgettable experience, and got a lot of friends among the students as well. So I think it required some creativity, or I need to push myself in those doors, and I think that's what I want to challenge NMBU at today. Try to keep those doors a little bit more open, orchestra or guide the students in a way that they can really follow their passion or set their interest into a practical context along the way.
So we could discuss this all day and all tomorrow, but I'm afraid we need to move on. Time is flying. So thanks again.
Thank you
for your contribution. Thanks very much. So that concludes the presentations, the morning session of this conference. We now will have lunch for. It was supposed to start. I think we are 15 minutes behind schedule. After lunch, so if we can postpone that until 12:15, I hope that is okay with all people involved. There will be a new session. There will be 4 parallel sessions. There will be 4 different possibilities that might show up here, might not. Yes. So the first 3 will be actually tours to different laboratories, sites on campus. And to participate in one of those, you need to meet up outside of the cafeteria outside here. And let's say they start at 12:15. The last one that represents the smart plastic, how to deal with the plastics problem, that will be taking place in here, just by the bar behind here. Again, starting at 12:15. So with that, I'd like to thank all the participants today, the audience, the presenters, for a very interesting day. And of course, we need to continue these discussions, and first part of that will be during lunch. That will be served behind here. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the day.